Okay, guys, today I'm releasing a little secret I've been holding for a year. It's a product that not only blew me away, blew away everybody that's come back here. So stay tuned. Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. As you probably know and seen in videos, people come back to my system all the time, listen to the Bach, the potpourris, and really get impressed, as I've shown you in some tutorials. And also, it leads to lots of sales of the potpourris and the Bach. However, there's one familiar theme this past year that when people come back here and they ask me, well, what else are you using to power the speakers, your amps? And I tell them it's a multi-channel amp from Primare. In the case of when I'm just doing two channel, I'm only using two channels of it, but it's the A35.8 Primare multi-channel amp that I also use when doing my home theater that I covered in a review I just did for the SP25. In fact, I didn't even ask for this amp. I was interested at one of the shows. I said, yeah, I'm due to replace my surround sound processor. So Fidelity Imports sent me the SP25 because this was supposed to be a surround sound processor for audiophiles. And sure enough, they were right. It was sound quality. If that's your highest goal, that's the processor to get. I'm blown away by it. But they also sent me this amp. I didn't really need it. I didn't ask for it, but I put it in my system and I was like, whoa. This is actually really good. And in fact, I started using it both for home theater and for my two channel. And there's a few reasons for it on top of the sound quality that I'm going to show you in a second, why it's so valuable a piece. And really, after a year with it, I cannot think of any negatives of this piece. I mean, there's always going to be different flavors in amps and different distortion profiles and how they mate with different speakers. But this has plenty enough power to drive almost any speaker. The tonal balance is totally neutral, but very pristine, clear, not bright in the least. It's just the near perfect amp. And especially when you see the features I'm going to show you and the multi-channel capabilities, this has basically joggled my mind. You know, everybody in the hobby kind of gets these preconceptions and dogmas that, oh, Class D is behind A, B, and, you know, tube amps. But that's a very primitive way to look at it, especially in 2025. If you still have these dogmas, erase them. Because as you heard in the Zoom I did with Ralph Karsten of OTL amp fame, this took a lot of risk on his part to deviate from tube amps to Class D. And I also have in that Zoom one of the inventors of Class D. He's in my WhatsApp group, and they were explaining to me why it's somewhat primitive to class all Class Ds the same. There are definitely poor Class Ds, and certainly, like most things in the hobby, it's evolved over the years. But when done right, as Ralph Karsten was explaining and how he decided to pivot, it can actually give you as good, if not better, performance than single-ended tube amps, OTL amps, less heat, more power, more variety of speakers it can make to, and the sound quality is better, assuming you do certain things right. If you don't do certain things right, then some of the dogmas of the past do apply. So it's about being a more sophisticated, high IQ audiophile, not classing all Class Ds as poor, all Class A's as better, A, B, and all that. That's a primitive dogma. You have to understand who developed it, how they developed it, and then, of course, test it and listen. And I've had the best audiophiles out here. In fact, Joe Fenninger, one of the biggest tube amp lovers and modifier and maker in the country. You've seen the videos I've done at his house. He came back here twice. He asked me, are you sure that's a Class D amp? It sounded so similar to what he's used to with tube amplification on speakers. And so that's been a familiar refrain all year. They cannot believe this amp. So I'm thankful that Fidelity sent it to me because I probably never would have even thought. I would have had that initial knee-jerk, oh, I don't want a multi-channel amp. But I took the chance. I did it myself. I proved it to myself and to others that have come back here. This is a phenomenal amp just on sound quality alone. But what really takes it over the top and why I am now recommending this piece over almost any other amp right now, especially at the price point of $6,000, around that, for 8 channels. This gives you the option to now actively cross over your speakers and now have an amp for each channel. But even more importantly, I'm going to try to pick this thing up. Oh, this is not your normal Class D amp, light as a feather. No, this thing, I'm going to have to use 2 hands. Let me grab it for you real quick. Okay, this thing is extremely heavy. And what I want to show you, though, is the secret. I don't even know if I can hold it up that long to get it in the camera range. But one of the things that make this amp a recommendation from me over almost any other, regardless of cost or anything, is that the versatility it gives you. So many times, especially when you're trying to make surround sound processor and home theater with your 2 channels, you're going to have RCAs, XLRs, you got to get switch boxes, or you have to do home theater bypass, all these kind of things that sometimes require cable swapping and whatnot. Well, with this amp, it's kind of built in. As you'll see on the back, there are XLR and RCA inputs, as well as the speaker terminals. But if you look real closely, you're going to see that there are options to not only 8 channels stereo, but you can bridge each one, and so use them in mono configuration mode. If you have a center channel, you can just bridge it, mono speakers to the center channel, and then, or get more power by bridging it. But then the other thing that's extremely valuable, and you can switch between XLR and RCA. So if you have RCAs for your home theater and XLRs for your 2 channel, all you have to do is go to the back of your amp, flip that switch, and you can have 2 different independent systems, same amplification, and different wires and everything. Very helpful for a lot of people that are neurotic about separating the 2. But also what you can do when you bridge it, I'm going to hold it up again, see if you can read it. It'll allow you to change the gain in the amp 6 dB tab higher. There's 2 little dip switches, and it allows you to help gain match different speakers. So I mentioned this in my SP25 review. Sometimes your center channel playing pink noise and level matching isn't matched to your mains or your rears. Your rears are much closer to you and they're louder, or this, they're different gain matching with amps and whatnot, and sensitivity of the speakers. Well, you don't want to use DSP to have to use some of its range just to correct for level. So what you can do is any difference in your speaker sensitivity, that one is louder than the other, you can do, like in this case, choose the 6 dB bridge tab and increase the gain of your center channel, and then it hopefully will mate better with your mains. Very powerful to be able to change the gain somewhat with these tabs and make all your channels now level without having to do DSP. And then DSP, when you're using it with either Dirac, Bach, any kind of thing, it's only doing stuff to address room issues, speaker issues, things with your head, things that can get you to super high fidelity metric. It's not wasting all this range on just balancing everything. So this is an incredibly powerful. Of course, being Class D, it's also efficient, very low heat. You don't have to worry about on the sides. You don't have to worry about heat sink fins and all that. It's not one of these massive chassis where you're paying for, in a lot of cases, just that chassis is the most expensive thing. The heat sinks and the chassis are the most expensive things on these monster amps. Tons of parts have to be in the way, tons of heat it has to dissipate. This is very efficient, but there's no shortchanging the parts in here. Guys, this is incredibly heavy, very well built. Let me show you the front, because the chassis of Primare is what initially attracted me. I was like, this is the way to do. I thought this was a $mega brand when I first saw them and didn't know it's not a cheap brand, but it's not $mega that the chassis would invoke. But you can tell it's kind of a brushed aluminum finish, and the power button is basically built in to their logo, which is very clever. And there is also this little offset from the faceplate. Again, I'm gonna get my workout here. Let me see if I can do it this way and show you guys from the bottom. There's an offset so the faceplate is extended and gives it another extra little flair that is different from just your stamped aluminum chassis. Again, lots of holes on the top for heat dissipation, but it's Class D. It doesn't even need that much. It's a 3-prong bass, and I guess, you know, I tried to find anything I could say negative about it. I can't. I really can't. The price is amazing for 8 channels of this quality. I mean, I'm sending this to Bob next. He's building a active speaker. He's going to try it out where he's actively crossing it over. I don't have that with potpourris. Don't have a crossover basically, so I don't need this many channels, especially because I'm getting rid of my home theater. But if I had a home theater, this is what I would use, no questions asked. And a lot of people may want the 2-channel one for their 2-channel, but I would get the 8-channel anyway. Eventually you can actively cross over your speakers, use it in a home theater. It's not that much more money to have this versatility. And also you can bridge channels, so you know, you do the math. The other thing I want to say is, the one thing I could probably say is the only negative with Primare in general with the chassis is that I'm not a fan of the 3. So it's basically 3 pods that sit on the shelf. The only reason I'm not a fan of that, in theory, there's something to be said for 3 versus 4 and leveling and whatnot and vibrations. But what I have inevitably found is when you've got this on the shelf, inevitably you're reaching behind it and then you're going to apply pressure to a corner at one point when you're listening. And if there's no foot behind each corner of the chassis and that third one is in the middle of the back, you know, I would put, frankly, I would put, if you're going to do 3, I would put the main 2 that are in the corners, I would put the 2 in the corners in the back part, because inevitably you're going to rest your hand on it or rest some weight on it, and then since there's nothing down there, or you're assuming it's a 4-foot system, it'll kind of tilt and you can potentially knock it over. But that's literally how nitpicking I had to get to find anything that I didn't like with this amp. It is just an incredible piece, incredible sounding. If you want to learn more, Ralph Karsten is about as honest as they come. You know, he's one of these guys that's done stuff in the hobby despite financial incentives. So he went with great risk pivoting to Class D after being OTL for so long. You can talk to him, watch that Zoom, I'll link it, put a picture up of the screenshot of the thumbnail. You can watch that video. Mike Rovner, one of the inventors of Class D, will tell you how Class D could sound so good, and Primare is doing it right. All you have to do, give it a try. If you see them at the shows, I think they might be at the Audiophile live show coming up in Raleigh, but if not, Fidelity Imports, awesome distributor. Pretty much the best distributor for that many brands that they carry. Nobody runs an operation better than Fidelity Imports, and they pick the right brands, and this one is, Primare is a winner. You know, this, I cannot recommend both of those pieces highly enough. I haven't tried everything from Primare, but everything I've seen so far has been A+. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Sorry I don't have music clips or anything like that, other than everything that I've released this past year, it was with this amp. So I do have music clip. If you've seen it with the WR2, you've seen it with the GR Research and Extremes, you've seen it with the Potpourri Hypersales, it was using this amp. But now I'm going back to 2-channel, sending this up to Bob. He may give a report in the future, but if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll see you back here soon.